Oh my God, I'm getting red. I gotta open a window. It's hot in here. I don't want to talk about my dirty laundry.
Okay, I'll be good.
Okay.
No jokes about Xerox machines and having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, let's keep it real.
Yeah.
We're a professional bunch here.
That's right. We're the pros.
Well, I'm very
I'm
excited.
nervous about beginning my embroidery. I chose the most difficult one, of
Which
course.
one did you get? Let me see. Yes, you did. You did.
Hard.
You
That is
definitely
very hard.
I don't
Yeah.
know why I chose this one.
I saw that one. I said, oh, I don't know how to do that one.
Yeah, well, let's see what I come up with.
Go back to the crow. Go back to the crow.
Yeah, I've got the crow in the other room. Oh yeah, I remember how I did that one. I'll start with the color pencils.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
That was
worked
a
for
great
me.
way to do it.
That worked for me the first time. Well, this is exciting.
It is.
Mhm. Let me practice for the next couple minutes that we have
Sure.
on sharing my screen with regard to the actual book, and then I want to get a sense from you guys what's a good
that's a good
size.
idea.
'Cause I always find text being quite small. You guys are seeing it, I guess.
Yep.
I can read it.
That's great. That looks
Good
perfect.
size.
We're starting. I believe we're starting here.
Yeah.
So that's a good size.
Yeah, it looks great.
I think it's a good sign. Let me just see something. Yeah, because I can still scroll my window to make it bigger if I needed to. So that
Any
means
thoughts on scrolling? Like I can scroll with my finger and then it jumps to the next page, or I can scroll with my arrow and it kind of does like this weird little.
Is there any way you can make your window like longer? I always like to see like like the whole page.
Well, I mean, I can
Oh, I guess.
make this smaller.
Are you? Oh, you're doing a PDF. Okay. No, that works. I guess that's all the text that's on the page.
On this page it is, but the
Okay.
next one is not. So if you want to see the whole page, I just have to make the text smaller. Then it's that size.
Honestly, I have my book right here. And
No, but it's,
I think
Yeah,
that's
I'm
fine,
curious.
Jaime. The whole page is fine. I can read
okay,
that
good.
perfect.
That'll be way easier because then we can just.
Yeah, go page by page.
yeah.
In fact, let me just zoom to the height. Well, this would be the whole height of the page. So then you can just click through a whole page from page to page without, is that still good, or is that starting to get small?
I might be getting a little small.
I think so too. So
It's a little.
For as often as I read, that's very small.
okay, but in order to get all the text, okay, so this would be the biggest I can be with still showing the whole text.
I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I like seeing the whole page.
Okay. Then we will do that. Hey, James.
Hey.
Hi, James.
Hi, Lauren.
I forgot to ask you if I could use your mycelium here as a stage set.
That's fine.
Makes me look smarter. I used it in my teaching today. All the students were very impressed. I told them wild stories about what each of those jars have in them.
Nice. Oh, I want to hear.
People think I'm way smarter than I am. Let me tell you that.
Hey, you were probably close to the truth.
You know,
Who
some
knows? I
people-
just know that nobody will remember anything anyway.
I mean, oftentimes if you get people to remember mycelium and spores and stuff like that, you've won.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently some people are buying books by the meter to like for their Zoom backgrounds to look smarter.
No
So,
way.
You know, this, there's a whole industry now of just
All right. I'm gonna
buying like
pull
meters
the
of
mushrooms around then.
books. So it's totally legit what you're doing. It's just you're taking it to the next level, like, you know, meters of living mushrooms. So I'll share the screen as far as the text, James,
Okay.
and then I will share the video time-lapsey thing at the end.
Sounds good.
But you'll do most of today's as far as like introductions and also questions, right?
Yeah, I'll be reading the question before the reading and then giving my thoughts to open up the discussion.
And discussing the underground pattern.
Discussing the pattern.
Yeah, because I don't know what's on here.
Now you will know
I will tonight.
in like 10 minutes.
Okay. Actually 2. We're about to go live if everyone's ready.
Oh yeah.
Ready.
Cindy, you're muted.
Okay, here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's so nice to see all of you here. It's been a minute, and we're going to wait for people to sign in before we begin tonight's program. What I'm going to start off doing first, usually we feature an embroidery of the week, but we are starting a new patterns, and so they are behind me, and I'm going to show you one in particular that James is going to discuss what it is. So this is, and I did start this one too. I should tell you that green's there, but this is the pattern that we're featuring tonight, and it's a part of our underground pattern series.
Do you want me to say a little bit about it now, Jen, or should we wait for
That'd be
other-
great.
Okay, so this was done by Michelle, and what we're looking at the bottom half of this circle, the kind of like, looks like a worm, but it's not a worm, the sort of spirally looking worm, that's a nematode. And nematodes, even though they look like worms, aren't exactly like earthworms. They're actually something like the top predator of the soil microbe system. So if you're looking at like the lion or the wolf as sort of the apex sort of creature of a ecosystem, nematodes are the equivalent. They basically gobble up bacteria, gobble up fungi, eat other nematodes, protozoa, and even soil parasites or things that can cause disease. So they're quite beneficial, and they're a really great indicator of how your soil system's doing, because if you got nematodes, you got everything below that needs to happen for nematodes.
Thank you. So while everyone's still signing on, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Jen, and I'm calling from Studio City, and I use she, her pronouns. And tonight, I'm actually working on the design that James just talked about. I started with the microscope on the outside, and I am going to pass it to Dee.
Hi, I'm Derainer, calling in from Baldwin Hills. I go by she, her pronoun, and I am still working on my native sunflower. And let's see, let me pass it on to B. Hey, B.
Good evening, everybody. I'm B. Jones, and I go by she, her pronoun. And I'm with Deraina. I'm still working on my pollinators. So you're not the only one. And let me select Michelle.
And good evening. I am Michelle. I am in Highland Park. I go by he, him. I am going to work on, I'm going to continue investigating what's happening under the soil. And I'm so happy to see so many of you guys. Thank you. And the next will be Carol. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol. I'm tuning in from Pasadena. I ordered a kit, but I haven't received one yet. So I can't say I'm behind yet.
But any day, any day.
Okay. But I'm happy. I will be happy to be sewing again. This is my first time attending such a meeting. This is a book that I've been wanting to read. So I thought, okay, and I love to sew. So it seemed like a good combination. And I pass it to Cynthia.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm calling in from West Covina, and I am working on the last series. It's our birds. Yeah, so I'm going to finish this, and then we'll get started on the underground. I will pass it on to Rowena.
Hi everyone, I'm Rowena. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling in from Mid-City. I'm still finishing up the native bee. Very happy to see everyone. I will pass it on to Michelle.
I think Misha's gone already.
Maria hasn't gone.
Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm here in Los Angeles in Monterey Hills, and I'm going to be working on some beading tonight and listening to this this book that we're going to be reading today. I'm excited because it's a new beginning of the Friday evening group, and I'm happy to be here. Has Izzy gone? Izzy?
I have not. Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm calling in from Palm Desert. I'm at my grandparents'. It's very hot, and I'm working on this mule fat. I have 2 more little buds to go, then I'm done. And I will call on Millie if Millie hasn't gone.
Hi everyone, my name is Millie Mason Moore. I am currently walking towards the market to get some ingredients to make dinner, but I am really looking forward to listening to tonight's reading. I'm sorry, I can't see. I'm on my phone. Jen, do you mind selecting someone for me?
Sure. Alex, would you like to go?
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm calling in from Los Angeles and Mar Vista, and I am going to be working on my everlasting thing I've been working on so hard. And I'm going to finish it. I'm not going to stop. And I'm really excited to hear the talk and hanging out with all of you. And I'll pick, I don't know who else is, somebody knows that they haven't gone if they'd like to go. How about Michelle?
Misha's so popular today.
I can go. My name is Jaime. I am in Lone Pine, California. That's in the Owens Valley, a few hours north of LA. And tonight I'll be sharing the screen and the book that we'll be reading. So that'll be my main task. Let's see. Aaron. And if Aaron isn't available.
Hello, I'm calling from Los Angeles, Metabolic Studio, and I am cleaning a workshop and soon to be driving home to listen. So I'm looking very forward to this, and I'm calling on Emily, who looks to also be driving.
Hi, it's perfect timing because I just pulled up to this grooming place to pick up my dog. But I was on the 2 North, and I wanted to say it was really cool to hear all your voices in transit and feel a part of the community despite, going 70 miles an hour. So it's my pleasure. And once I get home, I'm gonna make a blueberry pie while I listen, and just very happy to be here. She, her pronouns, city of Glendale at the moment. And maybe Jaime, could you pick someone for me? Because I can't see the gallery view.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh,
I'll
go ahead.
take over from now. If you didn't get an opportunity to introduce yourself, there'll be more time at the end and to share with us what you're working on, or what you hope to work on. The Metabolic Studios Learning and Mending series is now in its 4th evolution. This time around, we're addressing disturbance ecology and what emerges in the blasted landscapes of capitalism. To do this, we'll be collectively reading Anna Tsing's The Mushroom at the End of the World on the Possibility of Life in Capital Ruins. Growing through the last 3 gatherings, the first learning syllabus in response to ongoing racial violence, particularly at the hands of the police, the second holding space for the mega fires that have consumed the West, and the third addressing the larger reality of suffocation and the need for us to revive our breath. In order to get a deeper understanding of these crises and how they are interconnected, we are building upon the readings in the last 3 series. Many of you have received embroidery kits from us of native plants representing the food and medicine that Metabolic Studio is cultivating. We are adding some new embroidery patterns behind me, and we will share those each week. The theme of the embroideries we've been working towards is biocenosis, which is an association of diverse organisms forming a closely integrated community. If you haven't received an embroidery kit and you'd like to, please send your name and mailing address to info@metabolicstudio.org, and Cindy will put that in the chat bar, and we will send one out to you sometime next week. We've decided to close the entrance to the Zoom space after the first 15 minutes of reading to protect the flow and to keep a steady breath. These gatherings are being recorded through Zoom for archival purposes. We thank you for co-creating this opportunity to learn and to mend together during quarantine. Tonight we'll read the introduction and first chapter of The Mushroom at the End of the World by Anna Tsing. This 10-week series will focus solely on one book. Our guiding question is, what lives in the ruins we've made? Since the ongoing pandemic began, we have moved our weekly practice to Zoom, where we've committed ourselves to learning and mending together. And we do invite you to receive these readings as a deep inhale, and we find that crafting together helps receive these readings as a meditation. We will share our screen, and we encourage you to read a section of the text aloud with us. When there is a pause in the reading, please feel free to unmute yourself and begin where the last person left off. Silence is golden, and there is no pressure to fill this transitional spaces while we enjoy a breath and continue crafting. Feel free to jump in and continue reading at your comfort level. You don't have to read, it's also fine to enjoy listening. And now I will pass it over to James.
Hi, everybody. So before we start the reading, we decided to preface the reading with a question rather than coming after the discussion, coming before, so we can have this kind of on our minds as we're passing through it. So this week's question is, what are the ruins and places abandoned by capital near you? What lives in them? Can you imagine that they form patchy assemblages with other sites and ruins? So yeah, Jaime, do you want to pull up the reading?
Absolutely.
I can start out.
That'd be awesome.
Just to say, everybody, we kind of read as long as any of us feel like reading, and then when you're done, just stop and somebody else just pick up where the last person left off, and don't worry if there's some silence in between, it's fine. We're getting used to the Zoom void. Enabling entanglements. Ever since the Enlightenment, Western philosophers have shown us a nature that is grand and universal, but also passive and mechanical. Nature was a backdrop and resource for the moral intentionality of man, which could tame and master nature. It was left to fabulists, including non-Western and non-civilizational storytellers, to remind us of the lively activities of all beings, human and not human. Several things have happened to undermine this division of labor. First, all that taming and mastering has made such a mess that it is unclear whether life on Earth can continue. Second, interspecies entanglements that once seemed the stuff of fables are now materials for serious discussion among biologists and ecologists who show how life requires the interplay of many kinds of beings. Humans cannot survive by stomping on all the others. Third, women and men from around the world have clamored to be included in the status once given to man. Our riotous presence undermines the moral intentionality of man's Christian masculinity, which separated man from nature. The time has come for new ways of telling true stories beyond civilizational first principles. Without man and nature, all creatures can come back to life, and men and women can express themselves without the strictures of a parochially imagined rationality. No longer relegated to whispers in the night, such stories might be simultaneously true and fabulous. How else can we account for the fact that anything is alive in the mess we have made?
Following a Mushroom, this book offers such true stories. Unlike most scholarly books, what follows is a riot of short chapters. I wanted them to be the flushes of mushrooms that come up after a rain, an over-the-top bounty, a temptation to explore, as always to many. The chapters build an open-ended assemblage, not a logical machine. They gesture to the so much more out there. They tangle with and interrupt each other, mimicking the patchiness of the world I am trying to describe. Adding another thread, the photographs tell a story alongside the text, but do not illustrate it directly. I use images to present the spirit of my argument rather than the scenes I discuss.
Imagine first nature to mean ecological relations, including humans, and second nature to refer to capitalist transformations of the environment. This usage, not the same as more popular versions, derives from William Cronon's Nature's Metropolis. My book then offers third nature, that is, what manages to live despite capitalism. To even notice third nature, we must evade assumptions that the future is that singular direction ahead. Like virtual particles in the quantum field, multiple futures pop in and out of possibility. A third nature emerges from such temporal polyphony. Yet, progress stories have blinded us. To know the world without them, this book stretches open-ended assemblages of entangled ways of life, as these coalesce in coordination across many kinds of temporal rhythms. My experiment in form and argument follow each other. And then, Jaime, I think this is where we move towards the next section of the reading. Prologue. Autumn Aroma. Takamoto Bridge. Crowded with expanding caps, filling up, thriving. The wonder of autumn aroma. From the 8th century Japanese poetry collection, Manninyo Shu.
What do you do when your world starts to fall apart? I go for a walk. And if I'm really lucky, I find mushrooms. Mushrooms pull me back into my senses, not just like flowers through their riotous colors and smells, but because they pop up unexpectedly, reminding me of the good fortune of just what happens to be there. When I know that there are still pleasures amidst the terrors of indeterminacy, terrors, of course, there are. And not just for me, the world's climate is going haywire, and industrial progress has proved much more deadly to life on Earth than anyone imagined a century ago. The economy is no longer a sense of growth or optimism. Any of our jobs could disappear with the next economic crisis. And it's not just that I might fear a spurt of new disasters. I find myself without the handrails of stories that tell where everyone is going. And also, why? Precarity once seemed the fate of the less fortunate. Now it seems that all our lives are precarious, even when, for the moment, our pockets are lined. In contrast to the mid-20th century, when poets and philosophers of the global North felt caged by too much stability, now many of us, North and South, confront the condition of trouble without end. This book tells of my travels with mushrooms to explore interdeterminacy and the conditions of precarity, that is, life without the promise of stability. I've read that when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, thousands of Siberians, suddenly deprived of state guarantees, ran to the woods to collect mushrooms. These are not the mushrooms I follow, but they make my point. The uncontrolled lives of mushrooms are a gift and a guide when the controlled world we thought we had fails.
While I can't offer you mushrooms, I hope you will follow me to savor the autumn aroma praised in the poem that begins my prologue. This is the smell of matsutake, a group of aromatic wild mushrooms much valued in Japan. Matsutake is loved as a marker of the autumn season. The smell evokes sadness in the loss of summer's easy riches, but it also calls up the sharp intensity and heightened sensibilities of autumn. Such sensibilities will be needed for the end of global progress's easy summer. The autumn aroma leads me into common life without guarantees. This book is not a critique of the dreams of modernization and progress that offered a vision of stability in the 20th century. Many analysts before me have dissected those dreams. Instead, I address the imaginative challenge of living without those handrails, which once made us think we knew collectively where we were going. If we open ourselves to their fungal attractions, matsutake can catapult us into the curiosity that seems to me the first requirement of collaborative survival in precarious times. Here's how a radical pamphlet put the challenge. The specter that many try not to see is a simple realization. The world will not be saved. If we don't believe in a global revolutionary future, we must live, as we in fact always had to, in the present. When Hiroshima was destroyed by an atomic bomb in 1945, it is said the first living thing to emerge from the blasted landscape was a Matsutake mushroom. Wow. Grasping the atom was the culmination of human dreams of controlling nature. It was also the beginning of those dreams undoing. The bomb at Hiroshima changed things. Suddenly, we became aware that humans could destroy the livability of the planet, whether intentionally or otherwise. This awareness only increased as we learned about pollution, mass extinction, and climate change. One half of current precarity is the fate of the earth. What kinds of human disturbances can we live with? Despite talk of sustainability, how much chance do we have for passing a habitable environment to our multi-species descendants? Hiroshima's bomb also opened the door to the other half of today's precarity, the surprising contradictions of post-war development. After the war, the promises of modernization backed by American bombs seemed bright. Everyone was to benefit. The direction of the future was well known. But is it now? On the one hand, no place in the world is untouched by that global political economy built from the post-war development apparatus. Sorry, I just got a phone call and I had to turn it off. I'm sorry. I have to find where I was. On the other, even as the promises of development still beckon, we seem to have lost the means. Modernization was supposed to fill the world, both communist and capitalist, with jobs, and not just any jobs, but standard employment with stable wages and benefits. Such jobs are now quite rare. Most people depend on much more irregular livelihoods. The irony of our times then is that everyone depends on capitalism, but almost no one has what we used to call a regular job.
To live with precarity requires more than railing at those who put us here, although that seems useful too, and I'm not against it. We might look around to notice this strange new world, and we might stretch our imaginations to grasp its contours. This is where mushrooms help. Matsutake's willingness to emerge in blasted landscapes allows us to explore the ruins that has become our collective home. Matsutake are wild mushrooms that live in human disturbed forests. Like rats, raccoons, and cockroaches, they're willing to put up with some of the environmental messes humans have made. Yet they are not pests. They're valuable gourmet treats, at least in Japan, where high prices sometimes make matsutake the most valuable mushroom on earth. Through their ability to nurture trees, matsutake help forests grow in daunting places. To follow matsutake guides us to possibilities of coexistence within environmental disturbance. This is not an excuse for further damage. Still, matsutake show one kind of collaborative survival. Matsutake also illuminate the cracks in global political economy. For the past 30 years, matsutake have become a global commodity foraged in forests across the Northern Hemisphere and shipped fresh to Japan. Many matsutake foragers are displaced and disenfranchised cultural minorities. In the US Pacific Northwest, for example, most commercial matsutake foragers are refugees from Laos and Cambodia. Because of high prices, matsutake make substantial contribution to livelihood wherever they are picked, and even encourage cultural revitalizations.
Matsutake commerce, however, hardly leads to 20th century development dreams. Most of the mushroom foragers I spoke with have terrible stories to tell of displacement and loss. Commercial foraging is a better than usual way of getting by for those with no other way to make a living. But what kind of economy is this anyways? Mushroom foragers work for themselves. No companies hire them. There are no wages and no benefits. Pickers merely sell the mushrooms they find. Some years there are no mushrooms, and pickers are left with their expenses. Commercial wild mushroom picking is an exemplification of precarious livelihood without security. This book takes up the story of precarious livelihoods and precarious environments through tracking matsutake commerce and ecology. In each case, I find myself surrounded by patchiness, that is, a mosaic of open-ended assemblages of entangled ways of life, which with each further opening into a mosaic of temporal rhythms and spatial arcs. I argue that only an appreciation of the current precarity as an earth-wide condition allows us to notice this, the situation of our world. As long as authoritative analysis requires assumptions of growth, experts don't see the heterogeneity of space and time, even where it is obvious to ordinary participants and observers. Yet theories of heterogeneity are still in their infancy. To appreciate the patchy unpredictability associated with our current condition, we need to reopen our imaginations. The point of this book is to help that process along with mushrooms. About commerce. Contemporary commerce works with the constraints and possibilities of capitalism. Yet, following the footsteps of Marx, 20th century students of capitalism internalize progress to see only one powerful current at a time, ignoring the rest. This book shows how it's possible to study capitalism without this crippling assumption, by combining close attention to the world in all its precarity with questions about how wealth is amassed. How might capitalism look without assuming progress? It might look patchy. The concentration of wealth is possible because value produced in unplanned patches is appropriated for capital. About ecology. For humanists, the assumptions of progressive human mastery have encouraged a view of nature as a romantic space of anti-modernity. Yet, for the 20th century scientists, progress, also unselfconsciously framed by the study of landscapes. Assumptions about expansion slipped into the formulation of population biology. New developments in ecology make it possible to think quite differently by introducing cross-species interactions and disturbance histories. In this time of diminished expectations, I look for disturbance-based ecologies in which many species sometimes live together without either harmony or conquest. While I refuse to reduce either economy or ecology to the other, there is one connection between economy and environment that seems important to introduce up front: the history of the human concentration of wealth through making both humans and non-humans into resources for investment. This history has inspired investors to imbue both people and things with alienation, that is, the ability to stand alone, as if the entanglements of living didn't matter. Through alienation, people and things become mobile assets. They can be removed from their life, they can be removed from their life worlds in distance defying transport to be exchanged with other assets from other life worlds elsewhere. This is quite different from merely using other parts. This can be quite different from merely using others as part of a life world. For example, in eating and being eaten. In that case, multi-species living spaces remain in place. Alienation obliviates living space entanglement. The dream of alienation inspires landscape modification in which only one standalone asset matters. Everything else becomes weeds or waste. Here, attending to living space entanglements seems inefficient and perhaps archaic. When its singular asset can no longer be produced, a place can be abandoned. The timber has been cut, the oil has run out, the plantation soil no longer supports the crops. The search for assets resumes elsewhere. Thus, simplification for alienation produces ruins, spaces of abandonment for asset production.
Global landscapes today are strewn with this kind of ruin. Still, these places can be lively despite announcements of their death. Abandoned asset fields sometimes yield new multi-species and multicultural life. In a global state of precarity, we don't have choices other than looking for life in this ruin. Our first step is to bring back curiosity. Unencumbered by the simplifications of progress narratives, the knots and pulses of patchiness are there to explore. Matsutake are a place to begin. However much I learn, they take me by surprise. This is not a book about Japan, but the reader needs to know something about the Matsutake in Japan to proceed. Matsutake first appears in Japan's written record in the 8th century poem that starts this prologue. Already then, the mushroom is praised for its aromatic marking of the autumn season. The mushroom became common around Nara and Kyoto, where people had deforested the mountains for wood to build temples and to fuel iron forges. Indeed, human disturbance allowed Tricholoma matsutake to emerge in Japan. This is because its common host is red pine, which germinates in the sunlight and mineral soils germinates in the sunlight and mineral soils left by human deforestation. When forests in Japan are allowed to grow back without human disturbance, broadleaf trees shade out pines, preventing their further germination.
As red pine spread with deforestation across Japan, Masatake became a valued gift, presented beautifully in a box of ferns. Aristocrats were honored by it. By the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, well-to-do commoners, such as urban merchants, also enjoyed Masatake. The mushroom joined the celebration of the four seasons as a marker of autumn. Outings to pick Masatake in the fall were an equivalent of cherry blossom. Viewing parties in the spring. Masatake became a popular subject for poetry. The sound of a temple bell is heard in the cedar forest at dusk. The autumn aroma drifts on the roads below. As in other Japanese nature poetry, seasonal reference helped build a mood. Masatake joined older signs of the fall season, such as the sound of deer crying or the harvest moon. The coming bareness of winter touched autumn with an insipid loneliness at the edge of nostalgia, and the poem above offers that mood. Masatake was an elegant or elite pleasure, a sign of the privilege to live within the artful reconstruction of nature for refined tastes. For this reason, when peasants preparing for elite outings sometimes planted Masatake, stuck mushrooms artfully in the ground because naturally occurring Masatake were not available. No one objected. Masatake had become an element of an ideal seasonality, appreciated not only in poetry, but also in the arts. From tea ceremony to theater. The moving cloud fades away, and I smell the aroma of the mushroom. Koi Nagata. The Edo period was ended by the Meiji Restoration and Japan's rapid modernization. Deforestation proceeded apace, privileging pine and Masatake. In the Kyoto area, Masatake became a generic term for mushroom. In the early 20th century, Masatake were particularly common. In the mid-1950s, however, the situation began to change. Peasant woodlands were cut down for timber plantations, paved for suburban development, or abandoned by peasants moving to the city. Fossil fuel replaced firewood and charcoal. Farmers no longer used the remaining woodlands, which grew up in dense thickets of broadleaf trees. Hillsides that had once been covered by Masatake were now too shady for pine ecologies. Shade-stressed pines were killed by an invasive nematode. By the mid-1970s, Masatake had become rare across Japan. This was a time, however, of Japan's rapid economic development, and Masatake were in demand as exquisitely expensive gifts, perks, and bribes. The price of Masatake skyrocketed. The knowledge that Masatake grew in other parts of the world suddenly became relevant. Japanese travelers and residents abroad began to send Masatake to Japan. As importers emerged to funnel the international Masatake trade, non-Japanese pickers rushed in. At first, it seemed that there were a plethora of colors and kinds that might appropriately be called or considered Masatake because they had the smell. Scientific names proliferated as Masatake in forests across the Northern Hemisphere suddenly arose from neglect. In the past 20 years, names have been consolidated. All across Eurasia, most Masatake are now Tricholoma Masatake. In North America, T. Masatake seems to be found only in the east and in the mountains of Mexico. In Western North America, the local Masatake is considered species T. magnivelare. Some scientists, however, think the generic term Masatake is the best way to identify these aromatic mushrooms, since the dynamics of speciation are still unclear. I follow that practice except where I am discussing questions of classification. Japanese have figured out ways of ranking Masatake from different parts of the world, and ranks are reflected in prices. My eyes were first opened to such rankings when one Japanese importer explained, Masatake are like people. American mushrooms are white because the people are white. Chinese mushrooms are black because the people are black. Japanese people and mushrooms are nicely in between. But not everyone has the same rankings. But this stark example can stand in for the many forms of classification and valuation that structure the global trade.
Meanwhile, people in Japan worry about the loss of the peasant woodlands that have been the source of so much seasonal beauty, from spring blossoms to bright autumn leaves. Starting in the 1970s, volunteer groups mobilized to restore these woodlands. Wanting their work to matter beyond passive aesthetics, the groups looked for ways restored woodlands might benefit human livelihood. The high price of Matsutake made it an ideal product of woodland restoration. And so I returned to precarity and living in our messes, but living seems to have gotten more crowded, not only with Japanese aesthetics and ecological histories, but also with international relations and capitalist trading practices. This is the stuff for stories in the book that follows. For the moment, it seems important to appreciate the mushrooms. Oh, Matsutake, the excitement before finding them. Yamaguchi Sodo, 1642 to 1716. Wow.
How do we all feel about reading a little bit more? This was the end of what we had divided, but we can read a little bit more if we would like to into the next chapter following after this, or we can call it and begin discussing. I'm game to read a little more, but that's because I love this book.
How many more pages are there? How many pages are there in the next chapter?
Oh, there are it's probably 10 pages, but we don't need to get through all of them.
Okay.
We can sort of just stop it maybe in about 10, 15 minutes.
That sounds good to me.
Okay. I'll start.
But that's only me.
All right. Oh, Jaime, sorry, I meant just the following chapter, not the next one in the reading section. I'm sorry. There we go. It was still a bright evening when I realized I was lost and empty-handed in an unknown forest. I was on my first search for Matsutake and Matsutake pickers in Oregon's Cascade Mountains. Earlier that afternoon, I had found the Forest Service big camp for mushroom pickers, but all the pickers were out foraging. I had decided to look for mushrooms myself while I waited for their return. I couldn't have imagined a more unpromising looking forest. The ground was dry and rocky, and nothing grew except thin sticks of lodgepole pine. There were hardly any plants growing near the ground, not even grass. And when I touched the soil, sharp pumice shards cut my fingers. As the afternoon wore on, I found one or two copper tops, dingy mushrooms with a splash of orange and a mealy smell. Nothing else. Worse yet, I was disoriented. Every way I turned, the forest looked the same. I had no idea which direction to go to find my car. Thinking I would be out there just briefly, I had brought nothing, and I knew I would soon be thirsty, hungry, and cold. I stumbled around and eventually found a dirt road. But which way? Sorry, it was cut off for me. But which way should I go? The sun was getting lower, and I trudged along. I had walked less than a mile when a pickup truck drew up. A bright-faced young man and a wizened old man were inside, and they offered me a ride. The young man introduced himself as Cao. Like his uncle, he said, he was a Mien from the hills of Laos who had come to the United States from a refugee camp in Thailand in the 1980s. They were neighbors in Sacramento, California, and here to pick mushrooms together. They brought me to their camp. The young man went to get water, driving his plastic jugs to a water storage container some ways away. The older man did not know English, but it turned out he knew a little Mandarin Chinese, as did I. As we awkwardly exchanged phrases, he pulled out a smoking bong handcrafted from PVC pipe and lit up his tobacco. It was dusk when Cao came back with the water, but he beckoned me to go picking with him. There were mushrooms nearby. In the gathering dark, we scrambled up a rocky hillside not far from his camp. I saw nothing but dirt and scrawny pine trees. But here was Cao with his bucket and stick poking deep into clearly empty ground and pulling up a fat button. How could this be possible? There had been nothing there. And then there it was. Cao handed me the mushroom. That's when I first experienced the smell. It's not an easy smell. It's not like a flower or mouth-watering food. It's disturbing. Many people never learn to love it. It's hard to describe. Some people liken it to rotting things, and some to clear beauty, the autumn aroma. At my first whiff, I was just astonished.
My surprise was not just for the smell. What were Mien tribesmen, Japanese gourmet mushrooms, and I doing in a ruined Oregon industrial forest? I had lived in the United States for a long time without ever hearing about any of these things. The Mien camp pulled me back to my earlier fieldwork in the Southeast Asia. The mushroom tickled my interest in Japanese aesthetics and cuisine. The broken forest, in contrast, seemed like a science fiction nightmare. To my faulty common sense, we all seemed miraculously out of time and out of place, like something that might just jump out of a fairy tale. I was startled and intrigued. I couldn't stop exploring. This book is my attempt to pull you into the maze I found.
I think we can stop there. That's the end of the second chapter. Jaime, do you want to scroll up actually? Because I think the image of the page above is really interesting. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I can read the description. Conjuring Time, Kyoto Prefecture, Mr. Emoto's map of revitalizing. This is his Matsutake Mountain, a time machine of multiple seasons, histories, and hopes. All right, well, I think I'll start off we're about to open discussion, but I can just share some of my thoughts on this week's reading. I just love this book. It's an incredible book, even within the first 2 chapters and the prologue. Anna Singh does such a good job of weaving in so many different elements. When you're just thinking of how do Matsutake grow in a disturbed landscape, she also weaves in this larger idea of precarity and the time of precariness that we live in. And also the ideas of progress that still live on today, and the challenges of that, particularly the challenge of changing, and how do we change, and what do we do if we can't change right now, or if we struggle with change to actualize change. And I think there was something really powerful in what she mentions about paying attention to what's going on today, and to maybe really understand how do we change is to pay attention to the things that are underground, are in ruins, but are still within the present moment, that because of our mind frame, our mindset of only looking at things that are productive in this classical sense, that we ignore all these other things that are now becoming an emerging part of landscape all across the earth. And the other thing that I also really found beautiful was the sort of symbolism between Matsutake as a indicator of the change from the bounty, the easy bounty of summer, to the distinct aroma of autumn, but also the foreboding of winter to come. And I thought that's obviously really beautiful to have a smell associated with that so strongly, but also a larger symbolism about Matsutake represent the smell and signing of a different kind of summer, and a different kind of fall, and a different kind of winter. That being where we are historically, is right now we are in a way in a historical fall. We're changing from the ways of we've done things for the last at least 100 years, if not thousands. And we know that we're in this fall right now. There's all these signaling changes in our world. And not that winter is dark or anything like that, but there is something significant coming to change. And I think that symbolism of Matsutake in this book is really beautiful. So I'll read the guiding question once more, which is, what are the ruins and places abandoned by capital near you? What lives in them? Can you imagine that they form patchy assemblages with other sites and other ruins?
Could you repeat the question?
Definitely, of course. What are the ruins and places abandoned by capital near you? What lives in them? And can you imagine that they form a patchy assemblage with other sites and ruins? And I'll repost it in the chat so we just have it fresh in our mind too.
That would be good. Just because there are ruins doesn't mean that there won't be regeneration, just like the mushroom, like the Mitsaki mushroom. And when the first place that came to mind was actually the site of the moon and the site along the LA River, because that where Metabolic is and where the women's building used to be. And it's been so refreshing to see the rejuvenation of life that has happened there with the state park. I think that's a state park, isn't it? Right there. And also with Metabolic's cultivation and digging
all the work that Metabolic has been doing there. So it's really, it's ruins that have been just like the mushroom. It's like a metaphor for what the mushroom has done. That mushroom came back after the nuclear, you know, destruction of Hiroshima. So out of ruins, good things can come. And it is precarious, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that.
For me, what comes to mind when I think about ruins nearby are the agricultural landscapes of the Central Valley, particularly around Tulare Lake and the places that either used to be water or have such soils that if you apply salty water, which a lot of the water that you would find out there would have a lot of minerals in them, you end up with these landscapes that are really kind of baked by their intensive use and the salt and whatnot. And I don't know that those landscapes really even relate to mushrooms that much, because I would imagine that mushrooms would have a hard time growing in salty, dry conditions. Seems like the opposite of what they want. But those are the first things that come to mind when I thought about ruined landscapes of capitalism.
I like to think about, even though it's not exactly a ruin in the sense of that there was something extracted there that's depleted and um, no longer available for profit, but alleyways within Los Angeles, particularly where I grew up in Venice, was one of the kind of the first places that I like really encountered like different organisms, and especially like fungi. Like looking back on it, I thought it was something alien that was just growing out of the asphalt in between some concrete, like next to a bunch of people's trash can bins. But really looking at those spaces more and more, especially like with how inspiring like things like, despite the fact that they're invasive, tree tobacco and things like that, and is very hearkening to what the moon looks like, but in a very different way. Yeah, just finding these alleyways full of full of mushrooms and full of plant life, especially living in in LA, where you don't have a lot of access to outdoor green space. Beatrice, did you mean to raise your hand? Would you like to say something? Oh, I believe you're on mute, but please go ahead.
Yeah, I did raise my hand. With me being an urban dweller, also, you don't get chance to, other than to have a designated trip to go to camp or whatever. So my environment is basically within the city. And every now and again, you will come across these areas that are classified as ruins or open lots, old neighborhoods where there are buildings that have not been abandoned, but or either that they were in the process of tearing them down, or they fell over, or whatever. You'll find not so much the mushrooms, because I haven't really looked for mushrooms. I haven't, like I said, I'm an urban dweller, and mushrooms to me are just generally have been a problem that you find in the grass after the rain has come. But from the art standpoint, I have found the regeneration, like with from the ruins of where the community will start to bring things into those kind of ruined, abandoned, uh, unused areas that capitalism, signs of letting it ruin so that they will have an excuse to gentrify a neighborhood, because capitalism turns around and says, see, they're not doing anything with that community. But I have found going to different cities, going into Los Angeles, that the community starts to bring together things that maybe would be referred to as junk, but basically it's art, and they bring as a visual reminder that there's still life there, that there's still a form of common beauty, that it might be spontaneous or it might be a gathering of thought with one or several people. And that's like, to me, the mushroom. It's like finding that, or taking a walk and you turn the corner and it's like, oh my God, look at this. And I have seen several of those kinds of communities and little niches in the urban setting. And then people join in. If you can get people rallied up enough, it's like, well, let's keep doing this. It's a way of restoration to me. Urban restoration.
I'd like to bonify Miss Beatrice Jones, what she just said, because I believe in restoration and we do have to have a method, and the mushroom kind of brings us there. It's a reminder of like what nature does, and we're to follow that. So I'm going to leave that alone, and I thank you, Miss Jones, to bring that up, and I'm just going to say that, and I'm going to mute myself.
Yeah, I was just out in Joshua Tree for a couple of weeks, and there were a few strip malls, tiny little malls that didn't function anymore, and there were some plants trying their best there, and I'm just struck by the melancholy contained in those landscapes, because nothing is in its full blossom, and our ruins are not beautiful like the ancient ruins are. Our ruins are like a strip mall and a tumbleweed. So I have nothing except that image to contribute. I feel the feeling of the wish for restoration in it, but I don't know, maybe just moved by the poetry that goes through this book too, that how to bear this in-between place. Maybe it's about that, where we're neither using a thing or growing a thing, and it's just this not so bearable in-between place.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Olan. It's kind of, yeah, some of the messages of the book is, and we've only gotten into the first tidbit of it, but definitely about this place in between where we're disturbing it and it's not exactly being restored right now, but that there are things there that still exist and are, if you can maybe have a bird's eye view or we're omniscient of all these things, you could see how these different places work together with something that's not the original landscape, but something that is found its way in the in-between. Thank you.
I'm thinking a lot about the word ruin and how it kind of in this sense of capitalist ruins, it can kind of function as a spectrum, because when I, outside of this book, I think of ruins as maybe an ancient Roman building that's crumbled and with beautiful stone, like Olan was saying. Or I think of ruins as like the abandoned slaughterhouse that I used on a path I used to walk every day that I would pass by with like weeds growing out of it and all these different plants. But also how ruins in a capitalist framework can also just mean maybe a skyscraper that has not yet tumbled or collapsed, but is operating as the ruin of something else, the ruin of the landscape underneath it. So thinking about how ruin is like a fluid state that might not appear as ruins, but it may appear as progress, but that's inherently the ruins of a different kind of life system. Not really sure if that makes sense, but
Yeah, I would build upon that. Like, I think of the state of precarity that she talks about in this book, and the things I think about are all the buildings that have been left empty during this pandemic, and how we're in this state of precarity of how do we build these interior spaces that can function better. Like I'm hoping that the ideas around architecture and gathering and modularity in inside and outside and keeping it safe regardless of whether another pandemic hits and all that kind of thing. So in a way, I feel like our old ideas of those spaces is in a state of ruin, and we need to reinvent around that. And then in terms of the Matsutake, I think it's interesting how she roots the relationship to this. It doesn't matter if it's a mushroom or whatever it is. It starts off from the heart in a very sensuous way. So it's the smell. It's this passion for something that could be nostalgic, but something that you feel so deeply. And then the fact that it is found now in a nothing kind of landscape, I think is very poignant. So it's not something that you have to search for in like a treasure chest or something, or go on a quest like that. No, it's found somewhere where she thought there'd be nothing, and he pokes out and discovers this huge button in this nothing landscape. So to me, that's kind of a metaphorical lesson that where do we look for that passion again? Where do we find it again? We may find it in nothing, and then can build upon it. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I want to build on what Carol was saying about, the idea of the ruin that we're living with also being lodged in our kind of epigenetic memory, because of course, ruin is the destiny of everything. Like that's part of the living reality is ruin. And so I believe that I see mushrooms in my mind's eye. Like I understand that something will decompose everything. And the idea that there's a whole kingdom of living things that are the decomposers, and that those decomposers attract their own companions. So they're like the first line of decomposition, and like some kind of strange dark genesis, they call towards them their own companions that work in tandem to metabolize everything that will be or ever was. So for me, one of the things that I love about this book is that it like speaks directly to my mind's eye, and it makes me think about, also the poetics of despair, and how the idea of going for a long walk in the woods in that dark hour of the soul often gets uplifted by the discovery of a mushroom. There is something about the discovery of a mushroom which is like the discovery of a gnome. It's like this secret creature with a hat that exists somewhere like by a tree, and it's incredibly exciting
to find that. And of course, when you realize that it's exciting to find that because of decay, it becomes kind of very kind of heady.
Yeah, I really also, that's like where my like imagination, like future mythology brain goes a lot of the times too, is that there's a clip, and again, I think it's like Singh's talking about, which is like, you know, restoration is important, and paying attention to the interconnectedness of our species, but also looking at these places in between is also important. And so there was a clip from a Slavoj Žižek film where he's in a garbage dump and with like a bunch of trash, and he's like, a true ecologist loves garbage, which is just like, what are you talking about? No, like, but the message of it is, no, we shouldn't make more garbage, but the idea that somewhere in the future, you know, if we don't as a species come in harmony and coalesce with other things, there's going to be some fungus that's going to learn how to eat all the landfills and stuff like that. And that's going to be like a major site if you were, you know, another intelligent being to be like, oh, this is where the, you know, genesis after this mass extinction took place, because something learned how to break down plastic bottles.
So James, I have a question. I wanted to could you help me understand something about what you just said? Are you saying that something that might learn to eat plastic would be the beginning of extinction, or?
No, I'm saying, I was just saying, you know, if we experienced an extinction event and, you know, humans and a lot of life disappeared, there still would be, you know, life would still continue, but the next phase, you know, just as you look at, if we look at ourselves, you know, the human society is in a lot of ways powered by fossil fuels, which are a result of an extinction event. So maybe the next life form is going to catalyze itself by the ruins we've left, right? Which could be, you know, there's going to be a whole ton of plastic ready for something to transform it. But that's futuristic, weird thinking.
Okay, fine. I just was trying to understand what you
Yeah,
said.
yeah, of course. Thank you for the clarifying question.
That just brings me back to biogeosynosis, and the kind of dialectical nature between the life and the death, and how in the abiotic and the biotic elements that, you know, they feed off of each other in this web or patchy assemblage of life to a certain extent. Not to get back to the last reading group, but building off that, I can see the thread. Yes, that thread.
I think if I can maybe toss a question out, is one of the things that I thought would be fun to maybe share with each other which is related to the first question. Is Anna Singh talks about when she goes on walks and things that alleviate the sense of precarity that we're experiencing in the world we're living in and the time we're living in. And she talks about how for her, mushrooms are those things that when she sees them on a walk kind of alleviate that sense of precarity and provide like a sense of relief. So I thought maybe if people were interested in sharing, what is something that you see in your walks or in your house or somewhere like that, that alleviates that sense. For me, it's when I see reishi mushrooms growing in Los Angeles, which I never knew grew here. But when I see them on walks, particularly in autumn, it's the very most humid point of Los Angeles, which isn't that humid compared to other places, but they start spurting out of all of these dead trees. And I remember I saw one like right by the 10 freeway exit, and being in the middle of a massive intersection and seeing these mushrooms really brought me a lot of joy. So if other people feel like sharing maybe something like that, feel free to.
I can share a little something.
Please.
I think of my relationship to plants and the feeling of seeing new growth. I have cacti right now that are sprouting little baby spikes, and this happens every March, April, May period. And there's something about seeing that new life, that persistence of a living organism to push through, and especially something like a cactus that can survive with so much exposure to sunlight and so little water. I find that really relieving and comforting respite from, the chaos and the capitalism. Also, with some native plants, I've learned that it may appear on the top level that they have died or that they're gone, but what I've learned is to cut them at the root and wait 6 months and see what happens, and to see plants come back from dormancy, and to understand that they're living underground and reemerging. I have some stream orchids that are doing that right now, and I have some, I think it's called St. George aster, which is another native plant that's regenerating. Yeah, it just gives me hope that all is not lost, and that growth is still possible, and it's a powerful notion. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Emily. That was beautiful.
I know we talked about this before when we read Sing, but I really love when I see just tree roots bursting out of concrete. I think that that's a really radical and exciting and kind of like a big fuck you to capitalism that I love to see. Always makes me happy.
Love that.
I thought of one. I like when I am on a walk or I'm wandering around and I see a rock that I really like,
and I feel compelled to pick it up. And underneath the rock are all these like worms and potato bugs and creepy crawlers that I've only seen in sci-fi films with like lobster claw kind of hands and okay, there you go. Jen is diagramming that. And you can see like all of that like white mycelial kind of root underneath things. I always feel incredibly uplifted by like the surprise universe that's just underneath a kind of brick or decayed stone that you kick to the side of the road.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
One of my faves too.
Well, I thought I could share some mushroom images with all of you, just to kind of revel in the beauty of these amazing things. So just a few minutes of beauty.
I don't know if anybody mentioned this before, but in the book, in the pieces that we just read, in the beginning, the book talked about how the Misaki
I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it, but the
Matsutake.
Matsutake mushroom rose out of the ruins of Hiroshima. And the analogy to the mushroom cloud that was formed by the nuclear bomb, did anybody, I just was struck by that that incredible destructive mushroom cloud of nuclear materials disappeared, and what came up was this delicate mushroom. It's just quite something to think about. Contrast and similarity.
Yeah, I find that really interesting from the perspective, and I don't know if we'll be reading this section, but Anna Singh talks about if you're kind of somebody in the United States, like the culture around mushrooms here versus in particularly like Western Europe and the US, about a sort of culture of mycophobia, sort of fear of mushrooms, right? I still find that parallelism beautiful, but it reminds me of how we oftentimes associate mushrooms just with death in our culture. If somebody invited you to eat a wild carrot that they found, or a wild plant, you wouldn't really have that much hesitancy. But if somebody brought home a bounty of wild mushrooms, there's even if for somebody like myself, who's very into them and understands them and knows them, there's still a hesitancy, and there's this cultural association that we have with mushrooms symbolizing death in a lot of ways, which they do, but they also symbolize, like they're showing here, the sort of the gap between life and death.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And that really reminds me of the concept of indeterminacy that Singh talks about so much in this book, and how the essence of mushrooms are kind of our indeterminacy, and that's their beauty, and also how they can be a guide in the precarity of the ruins of capitalism, because they offer so many variable outcomes, which is something that in capitalism is looked down upon, or in these structures of humanist progress, etc. We don't want indeterminacy. We want a straightforward projection of where we're going. Yeah.
Lauren, do you want to talk about what this is? Is the film?
Oh, I just realized it was Friday night. Friday night. So if anybody was wanting to watch a mutagenic mushroom horror film, there's one that I've been planning to watch called Matango. And it was filmed made in 1963, and it's about a deserted island where people end up, and then they get taken over by these mutagenic mushrooms. And it was banned in Japan because a lot of the characters look like victims of an atomic blast, and it was a little bit too close to what actually people experienced. So I'm just saying, like, back to the imaginary, like the imagination. I just wanted to just give people some films to watch. Might inspire your needlework.
Lauren, what platform will it be shown on?
Oh, I don't know. I was just like, I saw that Stefano and Emily were on, and we sometimes watch movies. So I was thinking maybe we're, we're ripe for a horror, a little bit of a taste of horror movies. And again, I think that the whole idea of what lives in your mind and this power struggle with with mushroom and ruin and decomposition is quite interesting to consider too. I'm sure it's probably, popularly available.
Is it the oh. Huh.
I haven't seen it. I was just surfing the web about Japanese horror films.
It might be on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
I think Stefano found a place for Tubi. It's free on Tubi. I don't know what Tubi is, but it's free there.
Yeah, Tubi. I don't know what that is.
Well, I have given my nematode, is that correct? Some
Yes.
life tonight.
Woo!
Wow. Good job, Jen.
It's
That's
getting there.
beautiful.
Very, very inspired and excited to do this. I didn't give up, by the way, in case you followed from the last time. I didn't give up on my bird. I still have it. I just got really excited about this one too. So I'm doing two at the same time. So if you'd like to share what you're working on, or if you didn't have an opportunity to introduce yourself earlier, feel free.
I'm still working on this little bird and I didn't get very far. I just added some leaves or stems, but that's all.
Hi, it's Sharon Ryan. I'm off grid up in the forest here, and I just want to say that that was such a beautiful reading today. James, thank you for selecting that. It's just been an eye opener for me, especially as I'm walking around here and I'm just blown away of the mushrooms, and it's just been beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon, for coming. And yeah, I feel that one of the best things about this book is it really does make you, or at least me, want to kind of go outside and see things, and not just the sort of beautiful, pristine landscapes, but also get to know the cracks and the abandoned places and pay attention to those.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eugen. I didn't get a moment to introduce myself earlier. Right now, I'm working on leaf number dos and can't wait until I get to the moon. Yes,
Can you hold
this
that
is
up
actually,
again?
yes. So right now I have this, yes.
Beautiful.
Spring vibes over here. I like, instead of going with white flowers, I decided on just adding some color here.
Love it.
Yes, but this is my first time doing needle work. And so thank you guys for just giving me that sort of like fire into my butt. Excited to get started on the moon because I'm going to go really hard over there. But yes, today was an amazing reading. I'm like super excited to just get into all of the other chapters. I also wanted to introduce this one new magazine that's actually being made by a couple of my friends called mushroompeople.co. If you guys have any art that's inspired by mushrooms or just personal stories that happen, they're publishing a print magazine out in September. And so this has just really ignited a lot of different ideas for what my submissions are going to be there. But if you guys have anything to contribute, that is in the works at the moment. And they're from the editors of Broccoli magazine, who write about just cannabis and all things plant medicine. But just wanted to throw that out there in case anyone wanted to submit some art.
Wait, what was the website again?
Yeah, so on Instagram, it's called mushroompeople.co. So it's a new magazine that's starting from the editors at Broccoli magazine, but just kind of touching on all things mushrooms as well as just psychedelics and things of that nature. But I just recently started having some like at-home grow kits. And so I was going to talk about that experience of like experiencing like 3 different flushes really rapidly and then having nothing at all for the last month. And so just that sort of excitement, as well as like just writing out this period of like growth and how I saw that reflected in a grow kit was really interesting. So I'll be submitting kind of some written work there, but if anyone else has anything that they would like to contribute, they're really great people. But thank you guys. I have to go prepare dinner, but this was so lovely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good to see you again, Eugen.
Beautiful work, Eugen.
And enjoy your dinner.
Oh, and just a quick shout out. I didn't realize Rich was on too. I see his little Viking hat. Rich is also part of the film watching team with Emily and Stefano. So Rich, maybe we need to watch Japanese horror mushroom movies later. I'm working on a new piece. I'm working on this underground thing that Mish made.
Wait, hold on 1 second. I want to pin it. Wait, I just pinned myself. How did I do that?
Do you want to spotlight?
I got it.
For everybody?
I got it.
Okay. Nice.
Wow.
Whoa. I think Mish, is that one supposed to be like 2 mycelial networks like meeting each other?
I love it.
I should have them here, so let's see.
Here, I can put them in the chat too, if you want to.
Yes,
see.
yes, yeah.
Okay, I've got them all.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the right one. Let me see. Are you seeing them on the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's the right one.
I have to turn off my background to, I'm playing. I'm totally playing tonight. I'm just experimenting with beads. Not sure what it's going to be, but I have thousands and thousands of beads, and it's very meditative to just sit and play with the colors and listen.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for the reading tonight, and thank you for this new direction and the book. I didn't know about the book, and I'm enjoying it very much.
Hey, James, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Have you smelt a matsutake?
I have, but I've been told, so it was from, bye Lauren.
Bye, everybody. See you next
Bye.
time. Next
Um,
weekend.
it was my one of my close friends, whose father is Japanese, and he knew that I was really into mushrooms, and so he was like, like, oh, like I've got to make you matsutake rice, which is just slicing up matsutake and putting it in a rice cooker, because you really don't add flavor to it because it's so strong and so subtle in other ways. But he also was like, yeah, the matsutake mushrooms out here, they're not as aromatic or strong as the fresh ones that you would get out of foraging. So I did smell it. It didn't smell like rotting flesh to me. But I'm also somebody who's gotten over, there's some people who like really don't like that earthy mushroom smell.
Mhm.
So, but I really want to smell like
Same.
a freshly picked matsutake.
I'm dying to smell one.
Yeah, the autumn aroma.
I have to smell one before it's too late.
Yeah.
I don't even need to do it. I don't need to pick it. I don't need to eat it. I just really want to smell it.
Exactly. The elusive hunt for one.
James, have you studied psychoactive mushrooms, hallucinogenic mushrooms, etc.?
I don't know what you mean by study, like do I know about them? Like in general? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't do like a
Yeah.
PhD in them or anything like that, but like I know things about psychoactive fungi and their history, both ecologically and human cultural wise. Why, what's up? You got a question?
Well, I was just wondering about what you said earlier about how mushrooms are associated with death and how people are afraid of them. And I guess because, I mean, what we know is that if you're out in an environment, a natural environment, you just don't pick up a mushroom and eat it because you don't know what it's going to do.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing. Like I was saying, it's, even when people are picking plants, like obviously people know and people have more of a relationship with plants because, like somebody was just pointing out, when mushrooms form, they kind of form like once or twice and then they're gone, like within a few days. Either something eats them or they like self decay themselves. So, but yeah, I think it's just like more of like a hesitancy that people have. Like even if you're with somebody who's like 100% sure, like mushroom, and I'm admitting this as myself, like I'm gonna eat it because I trust the person, but there's a reaction in my body that's like oh, like these just came out there, like like could it make me, like feed me, make me high or kill me? But it's just kind of I can talk a little bit if you're curious about the history of why. So it's not like a a sure blown theory, but why people explain why like Britain and America have like a particularly deep like phobia of mushrooms, which kind of goes back to like two historical events. Bye, Izzy. It goes back to two historical events. One is the Roman army had like this huge military disaster where they fed their horses grains that had mushroom, like not mushrooms, but it had mycelium growing on it that it's called ergot's rot, and it's kind of like acid, like LSD. So all of their horses were like tripping while they were like trying to go into battle, and so like that's like kind of a genesis of it. Another thing is like the Irish potato famine and several famines in Ireland and the British Isles are also things that have caused that association. And then there was this point, I think like in the 17th century where the church in England just started directing lots of scholars to just start writing about like how mushrooms like literally are coming straight from like hell, and started associating it with like witchcraft and all these other things. But traditionally mushrooms, and that also kind of intersects with gender and feminism and misogyny, which is like these people for a long time held this, mostly women held the knowledge about medicine and foraging and mushrooms. And at the time, the church was trying to establish itself as the one source of direct knowledge in terms of medicine, obviously, and mathematics and all those things. And so it was also like a consolidation of power in that way. So there's like a couple things that that are specifically why the UK and then the settler colonial America is pretty mycophobic.
Okay. And what is the image behind you?
This is a fungus growing in a terrarium from the studio. So it's just the mycelium growing on the glass on the inside.
But is it a photograph of it, or is it actually growing?
What do you mean?
Is this a photograph behind you, or is it reality?
Oh, well, it was reality at one point, but no, it's not. It's not. I'm not like living in a giant fungus terrarium as much as I'd like to.
Yeah, it's hard to, I can see now that I can see it's an image, because when you go back and forth,
Yeah.
the lines around you change, but it really has, it looks so real.
Yeah. Bye, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I like this background. Bye, Kaya.
Well, looking forward to next week. Good night.
Yeah. Good night.
Thank you very, very much.
Of course. Thank you for joining.
Good night.
All right. Yeah, I think we're
All right, guys. I think we're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you,
Good night.
James. You rock.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
All right. Good night, everybody. I'm gonna end the meeting. Wait, who's the?
I'm the host. You can't. No, it can't end. It's not going to end, dude.
Wait, you can't do end for all? No, it's just gonna go forever with nobody in it.
I refuse. I just want to. I don't have anywhere to go. So.
Okay.
That was
All
good.
right. Yeah, that went really well. That was pretty smooth. I think maybe we might need to. We can talk about it later, but we might need to lengthen some of the chapters, maybe.
Yeah,
But I'm just not sure how long. That was one thing I forgot to ask: is how long time-wise do we want to fill with reading? So.
Right.
But we can always do what we did today: is just jump to another chapter and read like a snippet.
Yeah, but I mean, even if the reading is short, it just leaves more chance for conversation, right? And
That's true.
You know, is there a goal to end at 7:30, or is it like doesn't really matter, right?
I think it's all fluid.
Yeah.
So okay, cool. All right, man. Have a nice weekend.
You too.